Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the modern market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today. We have the majors are red again. Unfortunately, we apologize. Bitcoin is down 2% to 55K, ETH down 2% to 2.3, Solana down 3% to $128. Sentiment still pretty down bad. Number two, an ape CryptoPunk sells for 620 ETH. That is $1.5 million. We'll get into a bigger discussion on that and some of the stuff, interesting activity taking place on the lending market, which we always like to look at as an indicator of ecosystem health. And finally, $1.1 million of bets have been placed on the presidential candidate winner alone, the new Blast prediction market, which has been live for 24 hours. Those are the headlines today. We're going to get into much more in a little bit. And we've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs, and some discussion on whether or not prominent collector, trader, and investor Gmoney should default on his $1 million ape punk loan because he seems to be considering it. Stay tuned for that. Today, we've got Legendary and Sammy in the co-host seats. We're ready to get into it. But before we do that, just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we do or say is financial advice because we do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Friday, the 6th of September. The YouTube comments are coming in early. We've got Husker ETH demanding of you, I think, actually, because he's a fellow Pudgy Penguin. He says, "Make my coins go up!" Exclamation mark. How do you feel about that this Friday?
It's pudgy privilege, Shiv would say. I definitely like that, but I'm afraid I can't make the coins go up. And this market is starting to feel a bit annoying.
Just quickly, he said, if you can't do anything about the coins, more importantly, Husker says, more importantly, just make the penguins go up. Can you do that?
Not today. Also, not over the last 7 days, but in the future, hopefully, we can make that happen again. Market feels a bit annoying, kind of, but I mean, we talked about it. September typically not a good month, so that's fine. But on the positive side, there's things to do in this market and to basically distract myself from looking at the charts. So that is definitely a good thing.
I like it. I've got a point on that in just a second. We talked about the market being annoying. But Sammy, how are you doing? It's Friday. It's the 6th of September. How are you doing?
I'm good. I think market's a bit blur. So I think, I don't know. I think it's a wait and see game. Wait for October, see what's happening. And then we can decide which way we go. But yeah, similarly to you guys, a little bit just kind of waiting and seeing.
Fair enough. Question on that though, Legendary, you're talking about the market kind of being annoying. Whilst the market is annoying, it feels like we've spoken about how the timelines kind of got a little bit sketchy, feels like the algorithms maybe changed a little bit, but you've been hitting pretty great numbers talking about marketing stuff. And it kind of got me thinking the other day, like, are there enough people in it for crypto itself at the moment, or do we actually have way more kind of business people around the industry rather than like builders in the industry, like marketers versus builders? Did you have any like reflections on that, or how did you find that? If you want to set up like what kind of tweet you put out yesterday?
Yeah, I think that it's something we've all three of us have observed just by running them on the market and doing our individual businesses. That often when you talk to companies, you get the feeling that certain employees want to move out, want to start their own thing. They kind of like that being a creator. Then obviously you have the other way happening as well, that creators get together, start agencies, or basically put a business layer on top of what they have been doing as creators already. And the good thing about that is that I would typically say, yes, there's way too many business people for the size of our space. But the saving factor, the saving grace, however, is that all the business people are also consumers, like we are. We talk about the news. We are building our media empire out, but we are also degening ourselves, trying new products, putting money in stuff, investing in stuff. So if every business person would not do that and they would just try to hustle and sell and market and build spaces, media empires, whatever, it wouldn't work. But I still feel that the majority of people who are going for a role as their own marketing agency or whatever they are doing are still also consumers, and that kind of makes it work again.
Yes, I think that's probably fair. My one observation from marketing agencies, and some of them are good, some of them are obviously well intentioned, but I seem to be when I did used to give my data out, I seem to be giving a lot and not necessarily receiving a lot. I think a lot of people want to just like accumulate your information and then use it as part of a package to say like, oh, we work with whoever, we work with whoever, we work with whoever. It's like, no, we kind of just had a conversation once and we provided you with some information. Um, but in the same way that you try to build up a book, whether that's in any industry, you want to say like, right, we've got the contacts with these people, and network is as important as anything half the time. So that's maybe my reflection on that. Sam, unless you got anything else to add, which you might do because I saw you smirking, then we'll get into the headlines.
Yeah, no, I think there are. I mean, there are obviously marketing agencies, and there have been strategies in place. I think the portal strategy was very. I mean, that hit at the perfect time, and that, in terms of a marketing strategy, obviously did very well for what they intended to with the portal coin, like getting it listed and all this kind of stuff. So I think there are strategies out there. I just think at this point in time, we're in a bit of a lull. Like, people aren't looking to come to market because the market's not great at the moment. So I think we might see a bit more ramping up of marketing agencies and their strategies in Q4. So I'm looking for October and probably see them all come to market then.
Okay. Like it. That's just some initial chatter from the last 24 hours on the timeline. But let's get into the main meat of today's show. Let's get into some price action first, followed by the headlines. In terms of the majors, as we mentioned already, Bitcoin is down 1% at 55K. ETH also down 1% around 2.3K. Solana down 1.5% at $128. Getting into the headlines themselves, you've got majors red again, as we just said. An ape CryptoPunk selling for 620. That is $1.5 million. Some context provided by Tyler, where he shared that it was a huge sale for this market, but 2,000 ETH less than the last string of apes to move. The last time an ape moved at this price level was February 2021. So that was way before the kind of huge bull market of 2021. And I guess ultimately a low price for an ape to move for. Beanie said in addition to that sale, the best zombie has just been offered for 1,500 ETH, still way too high for this market, given there's a floor zombie now for sale for 300 ETH. Same seller turned down a $5.1 million bid just over 3 years ago. So a little bit of action heating up, but nowhere near those 2021 numbers. And finally, $1.1 million in bets have been placed on the presidential candidate winner alone on this new Blast prediction market, which has been live for 24 hours. Sammy's going to give us a bit of a breakdown on that a little bit later in the show, so stay tuned for that. Some notable sales, as we mentioned, the CryptoPunk 8 for 650 ETH, another CryptoPunk sold for 35 ETH, this pink hair one that I'm sharing on screen. Remember, we're live on video on X and on YouTube too. And that was it. In terms of sales, it was a bit of a quieter day. Let's head over to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify, the Legendary, to talk us through what's going on there.
Absolutely, yeah. For the JPEGs, it's a bit of a mixed day. We have apes on the announcements that we spoke about yesterday being up 3.6%, pretty good day for them, reclaiming that 11.85 ETH floor. However, still down 13% over the last 7 days. Azuki is basically behaving like a stable coin. I feel like for the last couple of days, I have been saying that they're flat. And again, price is unchanged, 4.75 ETH. They still get a bit of volume. They get like 40 ETH volume a day. So like 8 to 9 sales if all of them were to happen at floor. But the price for them is pretty stable. Pudgy is down a touch, 10.5 ETH floor, 1.7% down. In terms of some other collections that I want to quickly touch on, the eggs still in a downtrend, down another 20% and back to a 0.135 ETH floor. Remember, it was a 0.08 ETH mint, so it's still a nice 15x, but they absolutely did not manage to hold that hype at 0.35 ETH. And yeah, Miladies, I skipped them before. Apologies for that. Down 5% to a 3.2 ETH floor. So they continue that downtrend significantly. And then one collection that I also wanted to follow up from yesterday is Jirasan. Yesterday we managed, we shared that they had a 0.65 ETH floor, didn't manage to hold that, down 10% to a 0.56 ETH floor, but still up significantly, still up 25% over the last 7 days.
Love it. Excellent summary of what's going on in the NFT market. Sammy, what about you? What are you kind of catching your attention on the NFT side or otherwise at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, Kangpai Pandas have done a bit of a run up. I had a look
Really?
to see what was going on. Yes, they're up about 20%. There was a bit of a sweep over the past couple of days. Now, for those of you who don't remember, that went through a bit of a lull recently after the was it connections to a meme coin from the founder.
Sure.
I'm trying to work out who the buyers are. I think it's a mix of Blur WETH bids and some various purchases, some of them below floor. But it seems to have run up a little bit. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but something's in the pipeline. So whether there's some news that's yet to come out that people are front running on, it's a little bit interesting.
I like it.
And then just on the other side, so art blocks as well seems to be getting a bit of traction. And I touched yesterday on, if you recall, I think it was like mid 2022 when NFTs started to fade a little bit. Art seems to do pretty well. We saw the Winds of Yawanawa. Is that how you say it?
It is.
Popped off recently, yesterday or the day before, and I think art blocks are kind of gathering a bit of momentum as well, which is something that I'm kind of observing. So it's a similar trend. So maybe as we're coming into a little bit of a lull in the market, art seems to be doing reasonably well.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely reported multiple times that Xcopy in particular has been absolutely, the Xcopy bot has been going crazy, really, really high sales on that. Winds of Yawanawa got swept the other day from a 3.7 ETH floor to above 7 ETH as well. So that like 2x over 24 hours. And yes, it's been, I think, pretty promising in general across the kind of fine digital art side. Remember, not so long ago, I brokered with a friend a 35 ETH sale for Joe Peace 1 of 1 as well. So like for the top end of stuff, it's pretty, there's real demand there, and I think really high prices can be commanded quite happily.
Actually, just as a side note, I had a discussion with I guess they're kind of a fund specifically for high-end art with NFTs and stuff. And I think their strategy is to accumulate some of these pieces like Xcopy, but also accumulating some of the 1 of 1s associated with that. And then they'll try and lobby to get those pieces into the LACMA or various museums to try and bring that provenance up. And by doing that, by having that 1 of 1 of that particular collection or like a prequel in that artist series of collections, they actually have one of the best sort of collections of digital art. And they believe their thesis is within the next sort of, I think it's 6 to 8 years, maybe even sooner, that will then become kind of just known as art, and it will just be a part of history where these things will accrue value and they'll be in museums, and it will, they'll probably be able to exit a significant return. So it's just interesting to hear from like the institutional side, like what their strategy is, and they're actually accumulating.
Yeah, I like it. Excellent points. Legendary, any final points on that before we head into today's discussion point?
Nothing to add to that. Let's get into the discussion point.
Let's get into it. And just before we do that, I just wanted to welcome to the stage very special guest for today's show. We've got Gmoney up with us, the founder of on-chain lifestyle platform and clothing brand 9DCC, significant investor, thinker, collector, trader in the Web3 space. Gmoney, welcome to the stage with us, my friend. Going to be chatting a little bit about this loan of yours that you've got open. How are you doing, my friend?
Good morning. How are you? Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us, man. So today's discussion point, we're actually going to bring up this little this poll that you ran yesterday, where you asked the population after the 650 ETH sale of the other ape CryptoPunk, you asked, should I default on my 700k ape loan on Gondi, yes or no? Legendary, if you just want to click through, I don't know. Let's see Legendary's live opinion. We're watching on what's your true opinion here, Legendary? We're gonna, in order to see where the results are at the moment. You clicked on yes. So yes is actually at 57.3%, just so people know who are listening in. Remember, we're live on YouTube as well if you're watching in, so you can see this. The no is at 42%. Gmoney, what's your thinking here? If you want to set up your thinking about maybe some of the story behind the loan, this was pretty iconic when you did this on Gondi, when you did do it. If you want to just share that story first and maybe talk about your thinking here.
Yeah, so I took a loan out, I think it was in February or January. I took $1 million loan against my CryptoPunk, and for personal reasons, for things outside of crypto. But basically, the thought was I could either stay long ETH or sell the ETH that I had. And I was like, all right, well, I think at the time ETH was right around $2,200, and I was like, I'd rather be long ETH at these prices. So I borrowed that, and I took out the loan. I refinanced it a few months ago. Obviously, the value of punks had dropped since then, so I was able to refinance 700K instead of $1 million. But the poll was really just a troll, because I know Beanie has been tagging me for a couple months now, saying that the bottom on CryptoPunks is in once I default on my loan. And I'm like, yeah, like there's no way I'm ever defaulting on this loan. So the it's just like the thought process there is just like, even at the high end, even with the pullback in punks, I think the CryptoPunks market, and you guys follow, I think, the NFT market pretty closely. I think the CryptoPunks market is kind of unique in NFTs in that there is a really active long-term market in lending against it. So what ended up happening, right, is I think over the last couple months and couple weeks especially, there was a tranche of punks that had a lot of bad debt that came due.
Yeah, that was on Meta Street, right?
Yeah, on Meta Street, right? And so because of that, I think that was like an overhang of people being like, oh my God, I don't know if there's going to be enough demand in the market to absorb all of this at once. So what ended up happening with, I think some of it got pushed out in that it was refinanced. And on a Sunday night when the market was imploding, CryptoPunks, 20 of them came up for auction, and they ended up clearing at a really small discount to what the floor was, which I think is really bullish. Obviously, I come from finance, so a lot of the times you call this like a cleanup trade where, there's an overhang. People are waiting for that overhang to clear before they start buying. And, it's probably the bigger players in the market get the first look on it. So because, the seller wants to obviously sell it as quickly as possible. And I felt like this was one of those type of situations of like, buy the trade, because that overhang gets lifted. I was really pleasantly surprised at how well all that supply was absorbed. And I think it's like, I think it's like starting to maybe, won't say right size, but let's say get the market in more equilibrium in terms of that, because I do think punks are the best NFT collateral in NFT lending at the moment. So yeah, I just think the market's really interesting. I think I've used it. I think a lot of people have been using it for more longer term loans, because that has always been my thesis. I've been really active in the NFT markets, lending markets for a while, almost since I entered. I think I had the biggest loan on NFT back in 2020 with a $25,000 loan against my CryptoKitty. And I just think it's like the way that NFT lending grows is you need these natural markets where these are long-term terms, right? Where it's like, not where it's like, oh, I'm trading this on leverage for like a week. It's like, no, like I need a 1-year term, a 6-month term, so that I can utilize the capital in a way that I think I can outperform the interest rate that I pay, right? And that's like traditional lending. And I think when you get those naturals in there, you also get speculators that come in that think that they have edge on either side to also add liquidity. So, the poll was obviously a troll.
Yeah.
Like the value of the punk is worth at least 1.5 million according to the last mark. I personally think it's worth more, but yeah, it's just, I think what it does is just highlights the interestingness and like the budding market that is NFT lending, because I do think it's going to be a massive space going forward.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of interesting questions on the lending side. Just a quick one on the poll, though. Do you think, in the same way that maybe your question was a bit of a troll, do you think all the yeses are a bit of a troll as well, or do you think that people actually think it's time to get rid of it?
I think it was a bit of a troll, or maybe I was like, maybe people thought I was talking about a Bored Ape, right? So I think it was probably a little bit of both, but I was like, I looked at it like 20 minutes later, I was like, huh, that's interesting. I guess I'm getting trolled on the poll.
Maybe, yeah. I thought that was funny. Look, the stuff that you're saying about NFT lending being really, really important, or a potentially hugely important industry to develop, I think is very important, because we've been talking a lot about how it transformed, like the nature of the digital asset becomes so useful, like as an asset, if you're able to do this kind of stuff. And the way that I think you're able to refinance this, I think it'd be interesting for people to learn, if you're able to share, like when you say you just got refinanced $1 million loan, like how did that work? Why was it so easy? And why does that why is that so bullish for NFTs as collateral, because of the way that played out?
Yeah. So when I originally went to get the loan, I was talking to all the different lending platforms, because they are generally in touch with the lenders to see, oh, who's willing to loan against this and at what rates, right? So I was chatting with Gandhi. I think I'm an investor in almost all of them, I believe.
You're not sure which ones, just probably.
Yeah, I'm
you are Gmoney. I'm an investor as well, and I've seen your name on it as well. So
yes, no, well, I know I'm an investor in Gandhi, but I was talking to them, and I think the really interesting thing about their platform is that I can get.
Sorry, I think Gmoney is cutting out a little bit. Legendary, is he cutting out for you as well?
Yep, but I think Gmoney is back now.
Okay, I think you're back, Gmoney. We're getting like a little bit of technical issues.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me better now?
Yep.
Yeah, we've got you.
Okay, cool. It was really interesting. I think one of the things I like the most about that, I can get refied to a lower rate without me even having to do any work, right? Whereas like generally in traditional mortgage markets, if I want to refi, I have to go through the paperwork and find a new lender and whatever. And so as a side comment is, somebody was like, oh, well, I'll lend you 750 and you can default to me. And I replied with, well, you could just refinance my loan for a lower rate and you could take on that quote unquote possibly default risk. And I think that's one of the really interesting things about doing the loan on Gandhi, was that, as the loan came due, obviously the value of Punks had dropped since I initially took out that initial loan. And I was able to find a lender pretty quickly, relatively quickly. Came to terms, like obviously off chain, then they put it up and I accepted it and we did the refi. But I think it just highlights how good of collateral that it is, right? I think when I told them I wanted to refi, it took maybe less than a week to find the new lender, and we agreed to terms. So it's very similar, I think, to traditional markets, just moves much faster because things are on chain and you have the finality of things. So like the quote unquote DD and KYC that generally happens with, let's say, like a mortgage, happens much quicker on chain. But I think it's great, and I think it just highlights how useful this is as collateral. And I think there's probably a couple collections that you could use. Like I think like I actually, to extend the loan, I ended up getting some against my autoglyph, which was like very quick. Like that was like a standing offer because they have their lenders. There are lenders that are like, I'm willing to lend at this rate, at that, on this asset, because not for nothing, they probably hope that you default, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of these things, especially at the high end, trade so infrequently that if they can get it at a significant discount, it's worth it. And they're getting paid to like try to get it. You know what I mean? And so I think it's good personally, like, and I think it's only going to get bigger over time.
Love it. I love the kind of detail on the fact that yes, there's still an element of off-chain stuff, because I think people try to suggest that it's like completely on now, and I think it's definitely way faster. And there have been times when I've refinanced stuff, and yeah, you can just do that permissionlessly. It's pretty amazing that you're able to do that. But I guess at the very, very top end of the market, there is this little bit of negotiation and trying to find the right person in order to do that refinancing. A couple more questions for me. Then I know Sammy's got one to kind of draw on your traditional TradFi background. When you're talking about lending, one of the things I kind of think about, or the two options that people have to them, is to do it in ETH or USDC. You mentioned when you were borrowing this time, you wanted to borrow in ETH. Do you have any thoughts on like when either of those currencies, when it's best to like use them in different situations for the market?
Sorry, I got disconnected for the beginning of that. Was that question directed at me?
It was. Did you hear all of it?
Okay. I generally only like to borrow in USD because I'm bullish on ETH. I personally think, and I tweet about this every couple of months, is I think somebody that builds a auto hedge, where I think what ends up happening is you have a lot of capital sitting in ETH that wants to lend in ETH, and you have a lot of people that want to borrow in USD. I don't necessarily want to take on the risk of managing that FX exposure. So if there was a way that somebody could take their ETH, it gets hedged on like a DEX and lends to me in USD, I would pay an extra, I don't know, 200 bips in order for that like to happen, right? And I think that would I personally think that is that 0 to 1 moment that opens up a ton of lending in the space, because all of a sudden, like, because I think when you look at the dynamics, is the everybody that's in the space for the most part in crypto is pretty bullish on crypto. So we want to hold on to our ETH as much as possible. So if I want to take out a USD loan, I have to pay a higher interest rate, right? Because there's the cost of capital. And so I do think that personally, like I will always want to borrow in USD. And I think the interesting thing is, like, even in terms of like, if let's say that those MetaStreet tranches had been priced in USD, it still would have defaulted, obviously, but I don't know if it would have been as bad if it was in USD, because you wouldn't have the floating price of ETH, right? And ETH obviously affects the floor price in USD terms on these NFT collections. So I do think there's more maturing that needs to happen, but I think whoever can solve that, where like the pool of liquidity is, to converting that to where the pool of demand is in terms of like the ETH USD swaps and managing that risk, basically market making it. I think there's money to be had there.
That's fascinating. And I definitely take your point about the volatility of ETH risk. Because I mean, I know that CryptoPunks were volatile in USD also a reasonable amount, touching towards 50 something K, I think it was in the end. But the problem with those MetaStreet loans in the end was that there were two tranches done. One was at 40 ETH. There was one tranche at 40 ETH, and then the next one was at 20 ETH. And even the 20 ETH one, I guess, was kind of in danger in that respect towards the end, at being a really, really high loan to value. So definitely take that point. Final one for me before Sam's got another question. It's kind of zooming out to more the CryptoPunk asset more generally. I heard some people talking about like maybe the collection separating itself into 3 types. Like you've got the floor NFTs, then you've got like the clean ones that people tend to go for, then you've obviously got the very high end, and desirable ones. Do you think that the floor price will necessarily track super high if you do have this pool that are maybe less desirable than the other ones, but then the other ones will always have a premium? Or do you think they can all kind of move up together?
I personally think I don't spend too much time thinking about that. I read about those theories. I think they'll end up all moving up together, right? Because I think when you look at as the price goes up, the incremental buyer, right, and especially let's say if we get into 6-figure and possibly even 7-figure floor prices, is they're more institutional. They look they look more for what is cheaper, right? And so like if I want, let's say, a clean one, how much am I willing to pay? And I'll use myself as an example. When I bought my ape, I didn't buy my ape because that was my favorite one. I bought it because it was the cheapest one, and I was like, if I don't buy this one, I'm never gonna be able to buy an ape. Because I was like, that was the upper limits of what I could afford. And so I was like, I'm literally like, because I wanted to buy a different ape. There was like 1 or 2 other apes that I was like eyeing, but this was the one that was for sale at the time where I had the best shot, and I negotiated down to the terms that I ended up buying at. But yeah, it's like it's gonna be, I think, a factor of how much does that incremental buyer have to afford. And it's like, yeah, I would love to buy one that's maybe a little more expensive, but if I can't afford it, I'm gonna go for my favorite one at the floor, right?
Like it. Sammy, you had another question.
Yeah, I was just wondering. So I'm from a TradFi background as well, so it'd be good to get your opinion on kind of the direction that you think this NFT lending market's going. I think that tokenizing assets is super interesting because you can effectively collateralize it, take out a loan against it, and we talk about like CryptoPunks, sort of PFP NFTs, and also art NFTs. But do you see sort of in the foreseeable future where, I don't know, things like you look at Polymarket with like betting slips, like if you tokenize those as NFTs, you could effectively take out a loan against that from a third-party platform, or you could do like I've even had conversations with protocols around like the point systems, the points matter. People have a load of points. If you could tokenize that as an NFT, and then you could take out a loan against that if someone's willing to extend a loan. So I think there's like a lot of options that could potentially happen, but it'd be good to get your understanding of like where you think this is going, or this particular market's going.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hadn't actually thought about that, but that makes sense. I feel like maybe, I don't even know if they need to be made into NFTs, because that seems, since they're fungible, right? You could just do it on like an Aave like pool to peer to pool platform, right? It just needs to be collateral, right? Where accepted collateral. But I do think the fungibility of everything, right? And even like the points, right? And I think the first iteration of what you were just talking about is people being able to sell their points as futures, right? Like before they start trading. And there's like a market that is developed around, hey, you put up collateral, you sell your points or your airdrop before it actually goes live, and people are able to speculate on it. And I think all these primitives, like the cool thing about it, and especially this from a TradFi background, is you don't need to have like a relationship with a bank that's esoteric, and that you have to be able, you have to have an ISDA, and you have to be cleared, and you need to have at least $50 million sitting in a bank account somewhere in order to even think about doing this, right? I think one of the interesting things, one of the really cool things about the MetaStreet pool is that there was a way to short the 40 ETH tranche debt. Like, that's fucking cool. Like that, like in order to do that in TradFi, you need to have a direct relationship with one of the 5 or 6 banks that market make that debt, and they charge you insane spreads and interest and fees and all this stuff, both on both sides, in and out of the trade. And you know, you have to have a lot of capital in order to do it. And you were able to do that with the debt using decentralized protocols with no oracle. It was, I think, like, it's amazing, and I don't think people have realized it yet. I don't think it's being discussed enough.
I was trying to figure out how to do that at the time because I wanted to, but was it just with something like Wasabi, which had that token, or was it a different way?
There were a couple protocols on Blast that you could do it through.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. That was something that was on my mind at the time because I was actually holding some of that. I think that the name of the token was wrapped. It was like WMS with CryptoPunk something, because it's like, it's obviously a liquid credit token which represents the debt. So it's like one of the longest tokens I've ever seen. And I was actually holding the 41. And remember, Legendary, I think I got hold of the 21. You got hold of the 41, and I told you don't get rid of the 41, switch to the 20, because I thought there was too much risk in the 40. I remember us having that specific conversation. But Gmoney, it's been so interesting to get your perspective on this lending stuff. We've been really interested in the lending stuff for a while as well, as you can tell. We're actually going to get into, we're going to do like maybe, I think we'll actually go into prediction markets now. So if you want to stick around for that conversation too, I know you're pretty bullish on that as well. We're just going to get through the rest of the headlines as part of the normal show. So let's keep it moving, get to the next piece of the next headline, which was that $1.1 million in bets have been placed on the presidential candidate winner alone in the new Blast prediction market, which has been live for 24 hours. And Sammy, I believe you're going to give us a bit of a breakdown of what's going on here. Obviously, the context of this is that Polymarket is huge. That's definitely found product market fit. People are obsessed with that. So what's this kind of new entry on the Blast side?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know Polymarket for being a huge protocol, but actually when you look at the numbers, so I think there was about 16 million in bets placed yesterday that were kind of executed. So you're looking at kind of a 10 to 20 mil per day across the entire platform. But I think, so Predict launched yesterday or just over 24 hours ago. And within that period, they placed about over 1 million. So I think within 24 hours, probably about 1 million, specifically on the election alone. Now, I think that is the biggest pool of bets. The other bets, I think there's probably about 10 to 12 bets across the entire platform at the moment. So it's still early stages. But outside of that, you're probably looking at maybe 300-400K for the other sort of 10 to 11 bets. So there is, the bulk of it is in that. Now, it's not to say that, I mean, Pac-Man's really good at incentives. He's kind of been working very closely with Predict. So I think there is that Blast Gold incentive is heavily on providing liquidity, and it does feel very similar to how Blur operates. So when you're actually doing this, you'll see high bid walls with above and below. Yeah, so there is that kind of trading that's going on, but it does make me think, like, was Blur built so that this could kind of succeed? Because it is a very effective model, and all it needs is for sort of that recognition to get, okay, well, there's this much volume being put through it. There's obviously some interest. Let's actually start looking at it. And you got to remember that Polymarket is now, so their election data is now integrated into Bloomberg.
Yes.
So it's becoming quite a big deal, and actually people are relying on that as like a useful sort of data source or indicator to kind of understand what's people's views on this.
Okay, two key questions for me first, specifically because this is on Blast. So these are like Blast specific questions. I've heard that, remember, all USDC, which gets bridged over to Blast, becomes USDB and is basically put in Maker straight away and is earning interest like all the time. So my understanding is you're using USDB here, and you're, as in the process of placing these bets, you're still earning yield. That's kind of it. Just wanted you to confirm that or talk to that. But then the second question is, do you think also, because this is on Blast, there is a proportion that we can attribute to gold farming, and therefore the numbers could either they're skewed already or they can become skewed pretty quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think also just to add to that, just because it's the first 24 hours, you're going to have an influx of activity try and capitalize on that 900k blast gold that's being allocated to it. So I definitely agree that that's going to slide over the next month or couple of months. To your point around the native yield, that isn't integrated, and there's a dashboard in there. So when you log in, you create a privy wallet. That privy wallet is then, you can then deposit USDB. So you can only deposit USDB in there at the moment. And that earns, I think it's around about 8% native yield, so annually. And you'll have like a dashboard that kind of shows how much you would have earned, and that will get distributed as and when. I think it's on the portfolio value. So, so say you buy a bunch of bets for Trump to win, the value of that portfolio is then applied, so that the percentage is then applied to that to then work out the yield. But that's all in the dashboard, and you can see it all. Yeah. What was the second point you made? Oh, you muted.
Are people just farming this?
To an extent, I think they are, but there is a significant amount of capital on there. So I'd say there's probably, well, given that there's a million in betting volume, so that's how much slips have been kind of executed. I think there is an opportunity to arbitrage, albeit very minimal. Like I think there's about a 0.3 cents difference between Predict versus Polymarket. So if you were to go long to earn blast gold, try and put like a massive bid wall in, but then put the opposite like short position on Polymarket, then you could effectively arbitrage, or like remove your risk, but also just capitalize on the gold as like a net difference. But I think a lot of people at the moment, they're just kind of doing it on the same platform. So it'd be interesting to see if it does kind of dwindle a bit over time. But I think in the first 24 hours, just an interesting observation that there was that much interest. I didn't really expect that much. I thought maybe 100k or something, but to have a million within the first 24 hours, I think, irrespective of the blast gold farming, I think that was quite impressive.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Thanks so much for that summary, Sammy. Great to kind of springboard into a discussion on this now. Gmoney, I know you've been very interested in prediction markets and pretty bullish vocally on them too. What do you think of how Polymarket has been doing and going about their business, and how that's been adopted very, very quickly amongst a lot of people? And now that we're seeing this kind of proliferation of prediction markets, do you think that's good, bad? How are you seeing it?
Yeah, I think Polymarket has been around for a minute, right? And I think the fact that they've been able to get to where they have without a token tells you that there's a lot of good Polymarket product market fit. I think the interesting thing to watch, and I know people have highlighted it, is what are they focused on after the election? Because I think you see this all the time with all like election sites, and I think this is where Polymarket needs, or any prediction market needs to try to find their niche, is create markets where people can't like express that bet somewhere else, right? So like I'll just use myself as an example. In the past, right, there, like in equities, I used to trade equities. Along elections, you can make bets going into election night based on what you think the candidate's stance is on certain industries, so that if they win or lose, how those industries will react in the next day. But you can't outright, just in like traditional markets, you can't outright bet, will Trump win or lose, will Kamala win or lose. And I think that creating those markets where you can do that is really interesting. And like we have an interest rate cut coming up in about 2 weeks, right? Or expected interest rate cut. You can express that through Fed funds rates. In order to do that, like it's a little esoteric to put that trade on. But Polymarket right now has a market that has decent liquidity in terms of, will the Fed cut 25 bips? Will they cut 50 bips? Will they not cut? Will they raise? And I think like that, and that has like decent volume, because there's no, you can express that trade, but it's a little hard. You have to like open, a futures account, get the right quotes, understand the market a little bit. It's not that intuitive of how to trade that one way or the other. But I think that that's what prediction markets need to do, is find things that people want to bet on where the markets don't already exist. It's like there's casinos, have sports games, right, and stuff or whatever. I think I think it's gonna be really hard to compete with those types of entities. What they really should focus on is like there's a good amount of capital that wants to bet on this. How can we it's easy for them to do it?
You're just breaking up a touch for us now, Gmoney. I don't know if you need to just double check your connection.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of done talking.
Okay, cool. I know we've definitely got another question for you in a second on this, but Legendary, I know you wanted to come in here. I don't know if you had a question or you wanted to comment on the prediction markets themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on Gmoney's point in terms of the Fed interest rates, the way Polymarket is trying to capitalize on that is that they integrated this series feature. It looks like the
It's very
repost.
cool. We're sharing this on screen, by the way, in case you were watching in.
Like the repost icon on X, where you can see that is a monthly bet with $13.5 million volume in it. But also the other thing they're trying to capitalize on, it seems to be the next biggest bet after all the election related stuff, is obviously a Super Bowl champion 2025 with a $40 million bet, but falls way short from the political stuff. And as Gmoney said, it's probably pretty hard to compete with the typical sportsbook betting platforms. So it's really going to interesting to see now that you have on the one hand Polymarket, you have predict.fun, which is also UI UX wise deliberately very, very similar, to put it like this, in terms of it how it is designed, and to see if this competition will drive one of the two platforms to either specialize a bit more or to push for additional features to be developed a bit faster. Because not only the bets are interesting, right? As Gmoney said, some of the things are very, very hard to recreate in TradFi, and it's easy to bet on them if you can't do that on a platform like Polymarket. But feature-wise, I feel like there's lots of things that still could be added, and that kind of reminds me of the discussion that Sammy and I had. Was it 3 weeks ago when you had that post, Sammy? What else we could do with prediction markets and where they could be headed in the future, including the fact that you also suggested a potential to not only go by order book, but go by more LP style approach like Uniswap does it with the V3s, but also to be able to collateralize that position and borrow against your betting positions to introduce an element of leverage to that as well.
Very interesting. One thing which I would kind of raise a question on, and maybe this is my personal take at the moment, I've saw a lot of people with the take that it's only like this because of the election. Like, what are they going to do after? What are they going to do after? And like, personally, I don't see that as an issue at all. So like, I know that there's other established avenues for gambling and betting, and yes, sports betting is literally exploding as we speak in the States and has been for a while. Sports betting is super popular and through more traditional avenues. But at the same time, like, if you look at our on-chain behavior or consider our on-chain behavior, two things. One, when I tried to participate in one of these like American NFL somethings, I get blocked straight away. Like, I'm not in the States, and then I couldn't do it. It was some DraftKings thing once and I couldn't do it. So a lot, like, I know lots of people are in America, and that's where the majority of the market is, but there's a hell of a lot of other people obviously who love either NFL, whether it's sport or just any of the other things that are going on there, and want to participate. So you open up all of that market via crypto. But then the second more important point that I was thinking on a personal level is, for example, it would kind of be the equivalent of saying, well, you know, in terms of a payment system, the payment systems already exist. Therefore, there's no need to try to pay in crypto because, you know, I can just pay, like Legendary. You saw yesterday, I paid the person we're working with in the company. I paid this invoice, and he's in the UK as well. So yeah, okay, I could have used a bank, but I didn't, because I asked for his ETH address and I sent him USDC instead. And it's like, I think that manifests across the board in other ways where, yeah, of course you can do another route, but if you start to have a reasonable proportion of your capital on chain, and that's so much faster and easier to move, which I definitely think is the case, then I don't think that becomes an issue. And I think a lot of these things can go on chain. And I think Polymarket is in a fantastic position I don't think they'll have any issue. Okay, fine. Maybe the bets will be smaller, but it will still be a fantastic business, I think, after. Just curious for your thoughts on that before we move on.
Definitely, definitely agree with that. That there is a future after the elections, and the worry about the sports betting shouldn't be the biggest. I still think that a lot of the volume probably is driven by a potential airdrop farm, with Predict obviously by the Blast Cold farm as well.
Fair.
But also the majority is still just that desire to either come up with a bet that is interesting, to gamble, which is still one of the best use cases in crypto. And I think we've also seen it in the comments. Overarch was sharing, will Kamala Harris drop out of the presidential race? Is it 96.6% for no plus the native yield, which is almost such a safe bet that she's not going to drop out. You can stack an additional 3.4% on your yield farming already, especially as Sammy had mentioned previously, that you farm on your position size. So if that bet gets even more certainty and moves towards 98, 99%, then it's basically a mini leverage on your stable farm. So even though there's this farming component, even though there is obviously a bit of hype around the presidential elections, I do think that these platforms absolutely have long-term staying power.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not a personal fan of those like 2% bets where you risk 98% in order for an extra 2%, but I take your point. Like in general, there'll be other things for people to get interested in. Just a quick one that I'm sharing on the screen. I'm going to try and zoom in actually, because that's an atrocious view for people. The volume is insane. You mentioned Polymarket volume, like absolutely exploded. You can see back in, this product has been on chain according to these charts from September 2021, March 2022. There's like very small bars on this bar chart. Started gaining some traction in January this year, where it did around $54 million of volume. By June, it was doing 100 million. And obviously in the last couple months, it hit 380 million 1 month, and then a high last month in August of more than 450 million. And September's just kind of got started, already done 66 million. So really, really ramping up quite nicely for them. So congrats to the team, because that's awesome adoption. And that's what people are trying to go for. Look, we've only got a couple minutes left. Let's get to the Web3 Roundup to get you up to with everything else that's been happening in space in the last 24 hours. And then maybe just a quick hot take or cool take on the cooling market, which seems to keep going down from both of you. So this is from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Number one, Trump pledges to make US world capital for crypto in another speech, which took place yesterday. Number two, Coinbase chief financial officer says exchange has increased its policy spend in lead up to the election, and Kamala Harris is now accepting crypto donations. I didn't know that until I found that out, reported by Fortune magazine. Next, Near Blockchain explained their marketing campaign for its fake hack as an attempt to do something that cannot be ignored. I don't know about that, but that's what people are resorting to get some attention. Matchy launches on Blast today with a 100K gold reward for early depositors. This is that allegedly unruggable meme coin, which significant collector and trader Matchy is launching in line with Baseline Markets. Next, Bored Apes announced another collaboration with Bape with exclusive sale for Bored Apes and Mutant Ape holders. Trading card game Fancy Top on Blast did 600 ETH volume in the last week. That's pretty outstanding, to be honest. I think they found product market fit. People enjoying playing the game still, even after season 1 of Blast farming. And finally, Casey, the founder of Ordinals, publishes an article denying that Rock Toshi was a founder of Ordinals. Nice little bit of beef going on in the Ordinals household. Who knows? Who knows what happened? In the end, I guess we'll find out by watching the always true Twitter timeline. Last couple of minutes. Obviously, the market's down again, guys. Just wanted to give you a chance to speak to that. Any thoughts, any reflections, any concerns, considerations? Maybe Sammy first. Bitcoin down again to 55K, ETH down 2% to 2.3. Solana back under $130 to 128. What are you thinking?
Well, just the Fancy Top stuff. I think that if markets are down, people just like to play games. So I think there is that possibility that people are kind of dabbling in that. And I think it was today, someone swept 5 Greg cards for 2 ETH each. They just dropped 10 ETH on Greg just to make him an epic card, just to win him some more blast gold. So like people are playing. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the market, irrespective if the majors are going up and down. So I think people are still going to participate, and hence you got prediction markets that are still popping off. People are making money on that, and actually it's quite nice to be able to have some of your stables on prediction markets. If the market's then choppy, you can then ignore the crypto stuff and focus on the prediction market. So yeah, there's always something to be doing.
Fair enough. Legendary, final thoughts for today?
Exactly what I said in the intro. Because there's stuff to do, because there's predict.fun, fantasy top, whatever floats your boat the best. It's a good distraction, and it also speaks a lot about the space that we got to the point where there's actually things to do when the market is choppy and money and volume to flow into, because that certainly wasn't the case when I got into this space. When that was in 2016, and when you see ETH hitting 3 digits, 2 digits, 3 digits, 2 digits, you could just watch that and not really do anything with it, and ask yourself, will this blockchain and cryptocurrency stuff survive or die? And we've come a pretty long way from that.
Well, I still think people like to ask it, even if even if we're significantly further on. Every now and again, some doubt creeps into people's minds. But look, that is the show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, enjoyed the extra conversation with Gmoney today. He unfortunately, I think, lost connection, had to drop off after we discussed some of the NFT lending stuff and the prediction market stuff. So fascinating combo. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, we will be back on Monday live at 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube as well. And we publish to Spotify and Apple podcasts. Thank you to my legendary co-host, Legendary, and Sammy. And we will be back next week on Monday. Have a great weekend. Take care. See you on the other side. Bye-bye.